So reviewing our stiffeners, the first place we need to look at is our specifications. This is where it will be called out the very first time. So if you can look at our specifications, we have a column in here for stiffeners. Now, right behind the stiffeners is a spacing. Now, the thing you have to understand is this spacing is what's going to take care of that intermediate reinforcement. So if you're using a mid-panel tie rod, you better have a value in this spacing so that way it knows where to put it. Now, as we just talked about, the spacing is the length of the duct. Okay, so it's going to put a intermediate reinforcement 30 inches in the duct. And if it's 5 foot, that would be about 30 inches. Okay. Now, let's go into the stiffeners. Now, the stiffeners are broken out by pressure class, and that is just to help us understand which stiffener we're going to use. As you can see, we have the same stiffener in almost every single pressure class. But when I use it for the different pressures, I will use the one that is actually labeled for that pressure class. And the reason we do that is to keep the confusion down when you set up these stiffeners. Now, the way we're going to look at this is we're just going to open up a mid-panel tie rod. If I just double click on it, we're giving it the name, we're telling it what the central type of support is going to be, whether it be internal or external. If this were a joint tie rod as well, we would have to put an N type in here. Okay, so this one is just working with the mid-panel tie rod. Now, where do we get all of our dimensions for the mid-panel tie rod? We have to come in here to the break point. The break point is broken into 3 different screens. The very first screen is going to show length break point. And what that means is the width of your duct. Okay, so if your duct is going to be 72 inches wide, you will get 1 mid-panel tie rod. If your duct was 42 inches wide, you get no mid-panel tie rods. Okay. Also, what I usually do is I will build this out so that way if it extends over, we're covered with this support. So as you can see right here at 84 inches, I would have 2 mid-panel tie rods placed in that 84 inches. And what that simply means is it's going to take that 84, it's going to divide it by 3, and it's going to put the 2 mid-panels in the proper position. Okay. Now, that takes us to a mid-panel tie rod with a joint tie rod. What this is going to do is it's going to do the exact same thing. You notice that your central tie rod is going to the internal, and your end type is also going to the internal. Okay. If you go to your break points, just notice that we fill in that first table a little different. So we're still focusing on this first table of length. And what you're seeing here is if you are up to 84 inches, you're going to get 2 mid-panel tie rods spaced accordingly. And then you're going to get 1 end rod, so 1 joint tie rod. And what that means is that's going to just spot right in the middle of that 84 inches. Probably right at about 44 inches. Okay. So, the first screen is dealing with the tie rod or the conduit lock that we're working with. The second screen is going to deal with the different sizes of conduit lock or tie rod we can use. In this example, notice that you can go up to 120 inches and we will be using the same 1/2 inch tie rod, EMT, for those mid-panel tie rods. Okay? So all this is doing is talking about the diameter hole, the offset width, the offset depth, the connector for the tie rod for both sides, and then what data we need from that tie rod. Is it going to be all thread? Is it going to be a condulock use? Okay. So first one is to dictate how many stiffeners we get. The second one is to dictate if we have to change our stiffeners, in other words, our reinforcement from 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch to 1 inch. This is how we change it, and this is where we change the span of that calculation. Finally, the very last menu that we're going to get to, the best way to see it is by going to a joint tie rod with angle reinforcement. Now notice on this one, the joint tie rod is being called out. My center tie rod is gone. It is just going to be an external tie rod. There is no internal tie rod. If I did, I would have to use both. My joint tie rod is internal. And notice that we added 5 inches of space here to add on to the length of the angle. Okay. Now, the only difference that we're going to have here is way over here, you're going to see that we will spot an angle when we get to 999, which is incorrect. That should be actually 108. And if you needed corners, you have to place the corners here too. So with that information, we can actually export stiffeners for both internal or external or both. Okay. Hopefully this helps.